Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Strategy and Resources Committee on the 14th of July 2022. My name is Councillor Sue White and I'm the chairman of this committee. Members, we're streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting you're giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please place your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak. I'll then invite you at the appropriate time. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when invited to speak, you remember to turn up your microphone and turn it off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. And I've just got a couple of housekeeping things. Fire, in the event of a fire, a siren will sound. Please use the fire exits marked with the green running man. The fire assembly point is outside the main entrance to the council offices. Please gather there and await further instruction. Health and safety, please be advised of the different levels of flooring within the council chamber. There are steps behind the main horseshoe as well as to the side of the room. And lift access. The council chamber is currently unavailable, but we don't have any members of the public here. We've all managed to get here, so that's all good. Right, agenda item 2, apologies for absence. I haven't received any. Have you received any, Tara?
Chairman, yes, we have apologies from Councillor Mrs. Channer, and Councillor Hubner is attending as a substitute for Councillor Mrs. Channer.
Lovely, thanks, Tara. Right, agenda item 3, and the minutes found on pages 5 to 12. I know there's a minor amendment. Councillor Stamp?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Agenda item 4, not agenda item, minute 4. Councillor Fleming is not on this committee, so she didn't declare a non-pecuniary interest. It was me. So if that could be noted.
Yeah, noted, thank you. Right, agenda item 4, disclosure of interest. Oh, that is very true, Councillor Fluker. Agenda item 4. I think good job somebody's keeping me in check. Agenda item 4, disclosure of interest. Councillor Durham?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. A non-pecuniary interest as a member of Essex County Council. Thank you.
Councillor Stamp?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. A non-pecuniary interest as a member of Essex County Council. Thank you.
Are there any others? Councillor Fluker?
Chairman, non-pecuniary interest. I'm a member of Southminster Parish Council.
Thank you, Councillor Fluker. Okay, agenda item 5, public participation. I don't think we have anybody present, so unless I'm mistaken, Tara?
No, that's right, Chair. No, we have none.
Okay, thank you, Tara. Okay, moving on to agenda item 6, which is the supplementary estimates, Virements, procurement, exemptions and use of reserves, and that's over to Chris, which is found on pages 13 to 16.
Thank you, Chair. This is the regular report required by the financial regulations. There is one supplementary estimate to note at paragraph 3.4.1 of the report, and 2 procurement exemptions to note at paragraph 3.5.1, both relating to continuations of existing suppliers. Thank you.
Members, do you have any questions? Noted. Okay, thank you very much. That's noted. Okay, agenda item 7, which is provisional outturn, which is Chris again.
Thank you. So this report is the provisional outturn for 21-22 financial year. After taking supplementary estimates that were approved in the year into account, the approved budget requested a drawdown from the general fund of £97,000. The provisional outturn position requires a drawdown of £5,000, equating to a £92,000 underspend. The variances making up the underspend are at Appendix 3 for members. The largest of those variances relating to the leisure contract which has been regularly reported to Council. Revenue commitments are also at Appendix 2. This is where expenditure has been committed from the budgeting year for following years, but did not meet the accounting requirements to be classed as expenditure in that year, and will be replaced in a reserve to be released in this financial year. There is also the capital commitments listed in the report to be rolled forward as well, so that these can be implemented in future years. Thank you.
Members? Okay, that's all that noted there. Agreed. Move on. Okay, right. Agenda item 8, which is Leander. UK Shared Prosperity and Levelling Up Funding Update. Evening, Leander. Evening, Matthew.
Good evening. Matthew is going to deliver the first part of the presentation, so I'll hand to him to do that.
Okay, Matthew, when you're ready.
Yep, thank you very much. Sorry, just turn my fan. Thank you very much to the members. I'm just going to share the screen and present some slides to you. Bear with me. Let's check that they're working okay.
Yeah, they're working.
Okay, fine. Okay, thank you. So the Levelling Up Fund is a £4.8 billion fund for the UK, which is to be distributed through a competitive bidding process and spent on successful schemes in its parliament. It has 3 investment priorities: regenerating town centres and high streets, upgrading local transport, and investing in cultural and heritage assets. In order to help prioritise spend around the UK according to the general needs of places and levels of deprivation, the government created a new measure called the Index of Priority Places. There were 3 categories, with 1 being the highest priority and 3 being the lowest. In May 2021, Maldon was classed by the government as being category 2, and therefore mid-priority. In May 2022, this changed and Maldon was promoted to the highest category of priority for levelling up funding, the only authority in Essex where this happened this year. June 2021, 305 bids have been submitted into round 1. 12 did not pass the first gateway check. 293 were shortlisted and appraised further by the government. In total, 105 bids, 105, including 1 in Essex, were approved by ministers, awarding the first tranche of money totalling £1.7 billion. The LUF application process is complex. It instructs applicants to use the Treasury's 5-case model and expects projects to be able to demonstrate that they're economically and financially achievable and bring enough of a return on the state's investment. All bids have to explain what engagement has already happened, what the case of the investment is, how the proposals align with national, county and local policies, including the district development plan. Bids are also recommended to achieve MP support and are strengthened where organisations and/or the community support it too. These slides give you some ideas as to the level of details that the government is seeking for us to provide in each of the model's case for Maldon's application. They want to know how we are measuring value for money, what non-monetised benefits could be realised, the approach to contingency, risk management and processes, delivery and governance. As reported to the committee on the 25th of May, an assembled team of officers from across the 3 directorates have been working on a proposal focused around the historically and culturally significant Hythe Quay in Maldon. It's considered that Maldon's historic origins, Hythe Quay's presence for over 1,000 years, the remaining heritage marine businesses which operate from the quay, and the conservation area status all make this a very good candidate location for investment under the Levelling Up Fund's culture and heritage theme. It looks to build on the investment made to the quay in 2012 and support the continued working maritime operations, but with greater cultural opportunities for visitors. It is a bid which is aligned strongly to the local development plan and the Maldon and Heybridge Central Area Master Plan, both of which were adopted in 2017 and from which the image on the screen is taken. The project seeks to improve connections between Prom Park and Maldon High Street via a refurbished waterside public space at Hythe Quay and bring underutilised assets owned by the council into cultural, community and commercial uses. Collectively, these interventions should support the visitor experience, address multi-user conflict on the working quayside, improve facilities for historic barges and support crews of other vessels throughout the year. This is an architectural illustration of the proposed interventions which should help to support quayside events, regularise parking, include new accessible and EV charging bays, refurbish and convert the River Bailiff hut into a sympathetic commercial unit, redevelop the former classroom into a new maritime centre for community and commercial uses, including a new crew welfare facility, as well as enhancement of the public realm through changes to surfacing, wayfinding, landscaping and lighting. This change has been designed to ensure there remains adequate space to continue the tradition of painting of the sails, which has been expressed as significantly important in discussions the team have had with barge owners and the Heritage Harbour Association. So this just shows that a little bit differently from an aerial shot. This is looking at a new performance space near the Queen's Head and Jolly Sailor, with seating, with shelter, a refurbished quayside, removing the existing parking and introducing chevron parking onto the Hythe, the refurbished River Bailiff hut towards the south, and the replacing the classroom with a new maritime centre and welfare facility. The bid preparation has included the commissioning of Maldon-based architect Annabelle Brown to reimagine the council's buildings to determine how they could work better for their space, support the council's commercial strategy, and support the delivery of the government's net zero agenda. This shows the converted bailiff hut and changes that could be made to the building to make it more commercially attractive. The application assumes this would be a leasehold building, and therefore the insides could be different from what is shown here, depending on the end tenant, and the funding, if we're successful from the government, would ensure that structural changes can happen, but we wouldn't fit this out beyond internal washrooms. This shows what the new maritime centre could look like. This would double the footprint of the existing classroom, the classroom building itself being demolished, replaced with this, and offer more flexible space for community and commercial uses, particularly as the upper floor would command a new panorama of the quay and the wider landscape that cannot be currently seen from this position. Whilst details on how this facility could operate are still open for debate, assumptions taken in the bid are that it would be suitable but flexible space for multiple end users, be they the maritime and heritage organisations that are local to the quay, the community, pop-up business showcases or gallery space. It would be supported with a kitchen, storage area and toilet. Its materials would be in keeping with the area's protected conservation area status, but it would still need to integrate features that help to work towards or achieve net zero carbon status, as it is a requirement of the funding award. The application therefore assumes this will include an air source heat pump and solar panels on the bailiff hut, which could work for the energy needs for both buildings, lowering their carbon footprint and reducing the running costs. The vessel crew welfare facility would be attached to the rear of the Maritime Centre on land currently underutilised behind the existing classroom, and would house a kitchen, washroom and laundry facilities together with the vessel welfare centre would be covered by a green roof to support net zero obligations, address rainwater management and flood risk, support biodiversity and building management services. The proposal for this bid have now achieved 10 letters of support, including from John Whittendale MP, the Maldon and Heybridge Heritage Harbour Association, the South East Local Enterprise Partnership and the Steve Tarnard Brent Trust. Essex County Council intend to submit a letter of support. We are assured this will be with us soon. Members may recall from the previous committee that the bids were due to be submitted by noon on the 6th of July 2022. However, that day came and went, and the government have acknowledged that they've encountered problems with their online submission portal, and at the moment it has not opened. We're in daily contact with the Levelling Up Fund team, and as soon as it opens, the bidding documentation that's been prepared will be able to be uploaded, and we will be given a couple of weeks to do that. Should the council be successful, which the government is still advising will be announced in autumn 2022, some capital works have to commence in 2022-2023 to start delivering the projects. Work will start this year on procuring demolition and building contractors, as well as the projects and programme management specialists that will be required to manage the project's prompt delivery. Construction will need to be phased to minimise the impacts of the work in quayside and visitors as much as possible. However, all capital works must be drawn from the government by the 31st of March 2025, and therefore a balance needs to be found between disruption and timely delivery, working with the quayside businesses, organisations and local residents. All in all, the project's value has been estimated as being £2.2 million, excluding land assets. This includes all planning consents, highway licences, materials, labour, street furniture, project and programme management, a launch event, and also reimbursing Maldon District Council is likely to have spend in salaries to support the council's elements of the project. It also includes an unusually high 20% contingency across all years due to the current economic uncertainty. As set out in the addendum report, the council is recommended by the fund, by the government, guidance to submit a 10% match funding contribution to the project. Given the council's land assets are critical to the bid anyway, it's recommended that the committee agrees for the council's 3 land assets at Hythe Quay to be formally declared as a match contribution in the application. We're awaiting the final leasehold values for the Bailiff Hut and new Maritime Centre, and once we have those costs from the Valuation Office, they will be added into the project value and the percentage match contribution calculated. As set out in the addendum, at the very least, the match contribution will be just £513,000, which is around 19% of the total value of £2.7 million when the land assets are accounted for. The greater the percentage, the better the chances of a bid success for the council. Finally, as set out in the addendum, no council money has been used to prepare the LUF application. All costs incurred, including staff time from across the directorates, has been met by a one-off £125,000 capacity fund given to the council from the government. Work on LUF has cost just under £46,000 over 6 weeks. A balance of just over £79,000 remains. That does not need to be returned. In order to meet time constraints in the application process, the funding application has had to assume that planning consent would be sought before the outcome of the LUF application is known. The cost of this stage, including a 20% contingency, is £49,200. It is recommended that the committee approves further expenditure from the LUF Capacity Fund budget to ensure the planning application can be prepared from July 2022, which will ensure the Maldon Historic Waterfront Revival Programme, which is being bid for, can be started sooner in the event the LUF application is successful. Please could members just be aware, as advised by committee services earlier, that the addendum, the recommendations have changed for the levelling up aspect of this report. The recommendation in the committee report, letter 1, has been replaced with the recommendations 1 to 3 in the addendum. Thank you. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you. So if anybody's got any questions for Matthew first, then we'll move on to Leander, Councillor Durham, then Councillor Swain.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. It was a very good presentation. Thank you. Just on the contingency, I'm just concerned whether it's going to be enough. According to Homes England, building cost inflation's running between 18 and 20% at the moment each year. So that is going to potentially gobble up a large amount of that. So although general inflation is going to be expected to be 10, 11%, we're looking at double that in terms of building cost.
Yes, certainly. Contingency has formed quite a large amount of time discussion amongst the project team and also the economists we have brought in to support testing the contingency allowances. The 20% is considered by the external economists and also by the bid team as being sufficient for to put into the bid. We have noted through conversations with government recently that they'd expect to see 10%, but anything pushing that really needs to have firm justification. There has also been discussions as well as to whether or not we would stand a better chance if we put a 20% contingency into year one and have that scaled down to a lower level to 10% by year three. From our perspective, and I know this is a conversation we had with Mr. Leslie as part of the Section 151 assurance process. Sticking at 20% is probably about as far as we can go in terms of submitting a confident bid.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for that. I mean, the government shouldn't be surprised because that came out the mouth of the chief executive from Homes England just Monday morning. So I would hope they would take that on board. But thank you,
Councillor Swain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would it not be desirable to have a letter of support from Maldon Town Council as well?
Certainly, Maldon Town Council, if it wishes to, can submit a letter of support to this process. As we haven't submitted the bid because the window the portal hasn't opened. If members that are on the Town Council feel that Town Council might be minded to do that, we can make arrangements for that following the meeting.
Yes, I mention it because Maldon Town Council are meeting on Monday.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Fluker, then Councillor Siddle, and then Councillor Lagan.
Oh,
Sorry,
Councillor
it's had a long
Siddle.
day today.
I won't say what he got called last night, but it's desperately unfair, I tell you, desperately unfair. Chairman, two things really. The first was just really as a point of clarity, and I think the officer said that Maldon, I think, was an area which had been identified, presumably through its deprivation, that it qualified for this. Did the officer mean Maldon, or did he mean Maldon District Council? Because Southminster, of course, is the most depraved area in the district. And finally, no, I'm quite happy with that. So deprived, and and the other thing. One thing I'm very mindful of is how on earth we've arrived at the build costs for the new building. So I'd like some information around that, bearing in mind how close it is to the river and the likelihood that it is not going to be a simple build, bearing in mind it's all alluvial silts. And Chairman, of course, I will withdraw the slip of the tongue. The benefit of the residents of Southminster.
So, Chair, through you, in answer to the first question, yes, I meant Maldon District as opposed to Maldon. So the whole district has been put into priority one. So the district, the authority area. The second question, I'm afraid I couldn't hear Councillor Fluker's full question. I heard it was about how could we achieve something given the proximity to the river, but I couldn't hear what that was. So could I kindly ask for it just to be repeated, please?
Yeah, sorry. Really, I was just drilling into your cost analysis for build costs. So perhaps you might like to give us some background around that, and in particular, bearing in mind where the new build is, and the fact that it's almost certainly going to be alluvial silts, which is, as we know, very, very difficult to structure on.
Okay, thank you. So the costs have been arrived at through detailed work with the architects. So the architectural drawings were all prepared, and in addition to that commission was a full cost appraisal of how the building would need to be constructed, the fact that it would need to have elevated floor levels because it's in a flood risk area. That has been taken into account as part of the build costs, in addition, There's been some ground truthing and benchmarking done by officers in the commercial team to determine if there needs to be further inflation effectively on some of the fit-out costs, because obviously these would be council-owned assets, and the council would have a certain standard that it would be aspiring to achieve for these. Separately, all of the costs have been through an independent economic appraisal by Capita, and Capita have run those through a cost-benefit model and a value for money model to determine that what the council is putting forward is in respect of the information it's got today, it's as accurate as it can make. In addition, the contingency allowances that have been put in for 20% per year across all costs, should anything should any cost be higher than forecast, it is considered by the economics team that should be enough to cover things.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Fluke? I mean, actually, as a follow-on from the chair, I'd like to see whether things like piling and logistics and cranes have been included, because I suspect with the banks that you'll probably have to pile or build rafts or something, because we all know what the clay's like. So I don't know if it's been included now, you probably don't know, but it's just something to bear in mind as we get closer to decisions.
I could just come back. I mean, I think that was a very in-depth answer, but you know, it's the depth that I was talking about, and I think it would be very, very good at a very early stage to have a soil search conducted on the site. Thank you.
Yeah, so obviously in terms of preparing this preparing this whole project, we've had 6 weeks. So the full volume of what you'd expect to normally do,
6 weeks, wow.
you know, surveys, etc., has not been carried out. They would be carried out from July, assuming a committee gives the approval for the expenditure of that month.
Right. Okay, right, Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Winslow, for a very good presentation. And I would like to commend the officers on the work that they've done in a very short period of time. 6 weeks to put this together is absolutely incredible, and they should be commended for that work. On little 4 in the report, it says there, and I understand the need for dexterity and I understand the need for speed in terms of the projects and how things are going to work. But it says there that members will be provided with a written fortnightly update, and the decisions will be going through the corporate leadership team. However, will some of this be reporting to the corporate strategies working group? So as well as that information, will more in-depth and particular stages in the project come to that working group? That's my first question.
So in answer to member engagement during delivery, most certainly yes. We've actually mentioned a corporate project working group in the bid because the government require to understand how members, how the community, how the project team will be in dialogue during delivery. So yes, so that will be the case, and that will be up to I think, assuming we get the funding bid, the details of how the frequency of that can be worked out more in time.
Okay, so could little 4 be amended so it says that? Because it doesn't say it at the moment.
So little 4. So little 4 refers, it could be amended to also refer to the levelling up fund. At the moment, little 4 only refers to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which is Leander's element of the report.
Okay.
But it could, if members agree, be changed to the levelling up fund as well.
I think that would be useful. Yeah, because at the moment it doesn't really say that in any of the recommendations that it will report to. Also, though you put it in the bid, in terms of the report, I can't see that in there, that it will be reporting into working groups. So yeah, I'm happy with that. That it will happen though. The other thing that I have a question about is in terms of, so we want to move this forward, and we want to move it forward before we know whether we will get this money or not. So what is the potential cost to the council in terms of doing planning, in terms of doing soil work, in terms of looking at all the different eventualities that we might need to get in place even before we know whether we get this? So do we have an exact figure as to how much that might be?
So yeah, £49,200. That includes so that is the cost of submitting a planning application to ourselves, the cost of the planning agents, the cost of further survey work, of a flood risk assessment, for example, a heritage impact assessment, which are necessary prior to submitting a planning application. It includes the council time charged back, so that the council's not using its own salary budget for that; it's using the government grant. So that encompasses in that and another 20%. That includes what the commercial manager feels is necessary in order to deliver the planning application. So the cost to the council is nothing other than staff time. The cost to the government's capacity fund is £49,200.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make clear, that it was that amount of money, and I'm happy that you put the 20% into that as well, which means we've got a good amount of contingency. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Lagan. Oh, Councillor Stamp.
Thank you. Thank you. Mine's a quick question, really, based on what I've heard from Councillor Durham and Councillor Fluker. What happens if we are going to be overspent substantially? Where will the shortfall come from? Will it be Maldon taxpayers, Maldon District taxpayers? Because I certainly am going to say what I would normally say, and I'll be saying it under any other business. Everything's always Maldon-centric. There are other areas that would really benefit from some funding, not even as much as 2.2 million or whatever this is going to cost. Councillor Fluker raised about Southminster. Burnham-on-Crouch has got a beautiful quay, which is looking so raggedly. I mean, I think we would really, really appreciate knowing that money, that if it's going to be overspent on this project, is not going to come out of prospective funds in the future that could be actually invested in tourism and other areas within the district. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, but I feel very strongly about it because somebody needs to stick up for other areas than Maldon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stamp. And I think it's something we need to bear in mind, that we do service all of the residents in the district, although the Prom Park is lovely and the Hythe Quay is fabulous. Okay, Councillor Lagan. Oh, sorry, Mr. Winslow.
That's fine. So from what we put in the application, because the government asked the same question: what if the money's not enough that we bid for? Because what they're fundamentally clear on is you're not getting any more money than what you. If it goes over, then the council has to underwrite the cost of overruns. And this is a test which Mr. Leslie put the project team through to provide what assurance we could that the costs arrived at were as accurate as we could forecast them to be, and what would happen in the event that costs overrun even further than the contingency allowed. So what we've been clear in the application form is that first and foremost we need to deliver it in budget, even if that means that the project gets scaled back from within its current envelope in order to not overspend. So there's aspects of the project which you could argue are nice to have but not essential to meet the project objectives. It is intended that a quantity surveyor will be employed as part of this to try to drive as much value as possible and reduce wastage from the construction phase. Mr. Leslie may want to chip in as well, but the bottom line from a financial assurance perspective was we cannot allow this to run over budget. Because it would start to undermine the very reasons why we're bidding for the money in the first place.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That was obviously one of the questions we asked, and actually how much could we scale back? So that's one of the options around that, is actually looking about how we can do things differently, but still achieve the main outcomes and goals, because there are some things in there which can be scaled back. Appreciating there was six weeks to do the bid. Obviously, they got external people in to come along, challenge that as well, external people from Capita, and also they've been challenged from the team as well to those external providers, but appreciate there's still a risk around that. We've also got the plan which will potentially generate additional income as well through that. So the idea is that those assets that have been developed produce an income which also would help to offset potentially any costs as well around that side.
Thank you, Alice. And we just had Mr. Porteous, I think it was, just popped up with a message. I don't know if he's available tonight, or it was just a message that came through about the bias test.
I can contribute. So
Thank you.
we also had to run through the financial model. We had to run an optimism bias, which in a way, the base costs of the project already assume a degree of contingency in addition to the 20% contingency as a result of that optimum test. If I may, Chair, just to say in terms of other locations that could be worthy of further investment, etc., I do understand what members are saying, and what I need to say though is that where other locations in the district are, when we looked at what projects would stand a better chance to be classed as sort of viable from a bidding perspective, there has to be a degree of policy or strategy approval already in place for the bids to be made. So in respects of Hyde Quay or anywhere in central Maldon, there is there's the adopted development plan for the central area, and there is a central area master plan, which actually, without a central area master plan, we wouldn't have been able to do this bid in 6 weeks, because it did all the work 3 or 4 years ago. I'm certainly not, I don't think any of the officers wish to devalue any of the other credible sort of potential projects that might exist elsewhere in the district. But for this particular fund, it requires nearly shovel-ready sort of proposals. It came down to running with what we felt would give the council the best chance of securing funding.
Yep.
Thank you. Just a supplement. Can I actually ask if anybody can answer the question, how many projects have we delivered on budget or within budget previously?
Miss Leslie, somebody.
Don't have that exact figure to hand.
Okay, we'll get a report for that at a later date. Yeah, no, that's a very good point, and I think we'll get that raised. Right, okay, Mr. Lagan. Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Miss White. Kevin is fine with me, don't worry about that. Yeah, I agree that the report's been pulled together in a very short amount of time, and it's very detailed. A few things stuck out. I've got some comments. You know, Mr. Holmes and Mr. Butcher are obviously very primed for my comments, I'm sure, because this is like you guys as officers having my child and telling me how to dress it. And I don't really appreciate that. I find some of the things that we've said tonight from the 2017 report on the Promenade Park, that was 2017. This is about income generation, and it's minuted that I don't support the council's commercial strategy. That's in black and white, because I just see this as a way of generating income. And I'm not averse to that in certain aspects. This is rushed. This shouldn't have come to us late today to make such an important decision on some of the core assets in the district, and especially in Maldon. And as Councillor Swain has said, Maldon Town Council haven't even been consulted, and it is part of Maldon Town the last time I sort of remember. When I popped out my mum's womb in Maldon. A few things about the report comments, and please, officers, don't take this as a direct slur at anybody, because I can only deal with what's in front of me and the facts and the emotion of how I feel about it. So, you know, when we looked at it, the agenda item 8, the addendum, it talks about Maldon's historic waterfront revival programme. How many people come down the prom? Why do people come to Maldon? They come because of the prom and they come because of the quay. And the quay's been a working quay for hundreds and hundreds of years, well, since Saxon times, and it's generated by the hard work of a lot of local businesses that bring people in, not because of council officers and certainly not because of members. I reject the revival programme terminology. To me, it's insulting. What revive what? M&Co's closed, revive that. Okay, revive the channel in the river, because the channel in the river is silted up. Put some money in there to start to bring in some more historic vessels. That way you can start to bring in some wharfage. So I find that very insulting. 4.1 talks about monetarising benefits. What are they? If I'm going to sit and think about this seriously, I want to know exactly what the benefits are. I want a completely detailed breakdown. I don't want lots of lines and paragraphs that are very fluffy, very... I don't mean officer, because I've been an officer, so I know how to write these, but there's not enough detail. Where's the asset working group? Where's the conversations we've been promised that we're having? We're going to do things, we're going to involve you all the time about what's going to happen. I've scrolled through my emails and I've only come back from holiday yesterday. I can't find them. So that hasn't actually worked. 2.2. Sensitively designed improvements to support historic maritime operations based at the Hythe and the area's growing attraction to visitors. It's always been an area that's been an attraction to visitors. I'm not saying we can't make improvements on it, and I think the incorrect terminology of the old classroom, yeah, it needs knocking down and needs building up again. But there's options to look at what else could be put upon there. We talk about the safety and segregation of the vehicles. I've asked a question in this chamber once about the numbers of injuries that have happened, and that information's never come to hand. So, you know, I find some of this to be just terminology to make the report sound great. 2.3, improve footfall. Prove it to me. Prove it how this is going to improve footfall. Prove it to me that this is going to make people spend more money on the quay, because they spend I spend a lot of money in the Little Ship Club and the Queen's Head and the Jolly Sailor. But you tell me how they're going to spend more unless they spend it in a commercial offering that's in the River Bailiff's hut. The Maritime Centre, I would have thought it's prudent first and foremost, having been in the family that used to run the original Maritime Centre, to maybe look at what we want from a Maritime Centre. You know, what would be useful? Would it have areas for crafts? Would it have skills? Would it have presentations? Who's going to run it? Okay, and what's the return to the council? Officers seem to be focused on deciding what people want rather than actually realising what is needed. And I've said that before because I had somebody ask me that question and I said, that's what it seems to be. It seems to be a really good idea on paper, but you've got to get this really, really, really right. People like the quay. They sort of come down to it. If you go down the prom and you have a look around the quay, there's a lot of people. In summer, people are sitting down. There's an old plinth down there. I think I spoke to Mr. Butcher about it, that used to have the old clubhouse on it. Why don't we look at doing something like that? You know, let's not just say this is the plan and the only plan that could work. It's evolved in the years. If I'm going to support changes, I want to defer this report. I want to see more detail. I want to see options. I want to see the consultation. I want to see Topsail Charters involved. I want to see real dialogue. I want to see the proof that this investment is going to give a return to the quay without destroying it and making it all glassy and horrible. I don't trust the detail in the report. I'm talking about the report, and I'm not going to support it in its current context, no matter how much you try and fluff it up. It's a working quay. It has been for many, many years. Okay, I know you said that you spoke to the Heritage Harbour Association. That's a newly formed harbour association, a brilliant association with really driven people. There's the commissioners and there's other users down there as well. So getting a report to me on something that is so fundamentally important, even if we stand a chance of not getting this, I don't think we're doing the town and ourselves and the businesses any favours. And I will not support this in its current format.
Thank you. And I don't mind coming in first. I mean, part of it had to come quickly. And I think Matthew and Leander have done a very, very good job on pulling, and the other officers are pulling it together, because we only had weeks to pull this together, not months or years. And it was a case of getting an application in to try and gain the funding or don't get anything. And I'm sure there are some other areas, which I'm looking at two of them in front of me, that would have been more than happy to have taken quite a lot of the funding if they'd had something ready to go. From my perspective, the barges pay virtually nothing, because they need reductions, because the facilities were lacking, and hopefully this will address that. And from my point of view, you've got to invest or you lose. If you don't invest in things, they go downhill. So we're investing, I think we're investing to improve. Silting up of the river, yep, I'll comment on that one from the chair. I agree with that, but obviously we've got problems with Natural England and the Environment Agency, because you've got the anti-fouling and the molluscs, which always seems a bit of a problem, tied along with the sea walls, which are crumbling, and their mud fills up the base of the sea. So there's lots of problems there. And as for the interiors, we can work on those as we go, but they're just my views from the chair. But I'm happy to pass over to Mr. Leslie. Have you got
I
any
think,
questions?
Chair, just out of respect for me, you've come and responded directly to some of my points. I think that when you talk about the barges, naivety is shown in that statement you just made. People don't back a house. What are they going to get, a shower? You just mentioned that the facilities that we're going to be bringing in for the people who use the barges at the back of the centre, whatever you call it. Hang on, I think I made a note of that earlier on. No, sorry, I didn't. Crew welfare, that's the thing. That's just, there's nothing. Barges don't need that. Barges need a working key and a space. Okay, siltation is a completely different issue. I'd invite you to come to Maldon Town Council tomorrow, which the Mayor is hosting an event about siltation. So that will be something to really educate you in a bit more about some of the statements you've just made. I find that, yes, I agree that we do need to invest, but this is too quick. I'd rather not take it and get it right than screw up what's been here for a long time because we want to grab and get some of the money and the financial risk that it could potentially put us in, when every 5 minutes I'm told we got no money.
Yeah, but if I might come back, as a family, we do have a jetty and we do own foreshore, so we do know a little bit about silting up, and that's why I was giving the view. These are my personal views on this, but it's a district-wide issue, and I do sit on a lot of the harbour groups and everything else, so I'm well aware of the silting up issues, and I have been involved with the harbour authorities for quite some time, and Natural England, I work very closely with them, and the Environment Agency in trying to resolve some of these issues, because I've been pushing for decades to actually resolve the silting up, because for me it's one of the biggest problems that our district is facing as a whole, and that's not just Maldon, that's also Burnham. And we need investment. We have to have inward investment. If you don't have investment, things they don't stay the same, they get worse. So we have to invest. And you know what, this is a moving document. We can all keep inputting, but we have to get something on the table to try and get this funding. If we do nothing, we will lose it. And for me, I think it's a bigger thing to lose the funding than it is to tinker with it as time goes on. And I'm sure Councillor Lagan, you'll have a lot of input going forwards, as will all members. Right, Mr. Leslie, I'll let you come back. You can answer the technical questions. And Councillor Flukie, I've got you on the list.
Good, Chair. The opportunity obviously presented itself when we were moved to the highest level of priority that came in. So the opportunity to access the Levelling Up Fund significantly increased there. Time, of course, was short to do that, and they picked the camp project, a member-approved camp project, to come in as a best opportunity to access that funding from our perspective. So obviously we've had to work very quickly to try and bring forward that opportunity. The expectation is that there will not be another opportunity for that. Mr. Winslow may be able to add a bit more around that, but our understanding is there will not be another opportunity after this. So given that information, given what we can put forward, and given we have an approved camp project, work obviously started around that side of it. I don't know, Mr. Winslow, if you could perhaps just confirm the urgency around that. Appreciating, obviously everyone's had to work enormously hard to try and get this ready. Okay, thank you. Matt, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, it was a little bit interrupted then, sorry. Yeah, so to confirm is that at the moment this is a concept for to fund a project. Planning permission still required. There's still a lot of work to do on the final design, and some of the things which have been mentioned about how it should actually be used, what could go into it. That's as indicated. That's all subject to debate. The bid has been designed with enough flexibility that that there's enough flexibility for a number of end users. And that's what was commissioned quickly from the architects. When I say quickly from the architects, they've had the same amount of time as we have to sort of pull information together. Chris has already mentioned that this is an approved council project. It has a council resolution, but project 4 of the Central Area Master Plan is for improvements to Hythe Quay. There's certainly not any offence meant by using the terms revival or regeneration or rejuvenation. What I would say as part of that is that there's a lot of competition, as you might have seen in the first round of bids. 305 bids made, 105 bids given approval. When the initial tranche of all of those goes through, there's a big trend in the bids that were successful in that they have a snappy, fluffy title and not a title which is probably more meaningful to the local area that they're in. And I'm afraid that's just the sort of thing that funding business is in. In terms of dredging, and now we actually this issue actually came up as part of our engagement with the Heritage Harbour Association and the barge owners themselves, because we met the barge owners separately, when the Heritage Harbour Association initially, I think, were a bit concerned that we weren't throwing dredging into the bid. Now, the challenge is we looked at whether we could do so, and we can't under the terms of the funding. Now, that's not saying that the more frequent dredging shouldn't happen. I'm not the person to advise on that, and there's probably more qualified people in the chamber this evening to know whether or not dredging can happen more frequently than it does. But it can't be funded out of the Levelling Up Fund. It's considered a maintenance cost. And therefore the council or others need to fund for that. So we couldn't unfortunately put that in. A discussion happened with the barges and the Heritage Harbour Association, and what we hope though is that if Maldon was successful in this, may it open up other funds that, or other opportunities to fund a more regular dredging programme in the future, or mud washing as was one of the other ideas that was suggested. In terms of the visiting, well, the vessel facility, this was a suggestion that came out of the conversations with the Heritage Harbour Association, some of the barge and maritime businesses down on the quay over the last sort of 6 weeks or so. This is the intention is that this would be for giving the council greater opportunity for, if it was to go down further berths in the future, that it would increase the ability for the council to attract visiting vessels, maybe not just necessarily heritage vessels, but other vessels as well. There are other projects as part of the Prom Park improvements that could see berths, pontoons along the river's edge. The one downside to that was sort of recognised was that there seems to be a bit of a demand for kitchen, washroom, laundry facilities. Maybe it helps for sort of overnight stays or longer times moored at Maldon. And whether or not we could integrate that into part of the bid, and that was what was that outlay was investigated. So I don't have anything further to add, Chair, but I can assure you that as much that this is based on projects which the council has already approved as part of its commercial strategy, that have been through council and have approval, and officers are now asked to try and deliver in any way possible.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Right, I'm going to go very quickly. I've got one new hand and one other hand. Oh, and two more hands, and that we'll have to stop then, or we're going to go on for too long. Right, Councillor Fluker, followed by Councillor
Thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful.
Followed by Councillor Bassinger.
I'm grateful, Chairman. Yeah, obviously the master plan doesn't give you carte blanche to go out and do whatever you do. I mean, obviously you've got to look at the policy and then decide what you're going to do. It's disappointing visitors' berth. We've got an actual visitors' berth, you know, a dedicated visitors' berth on Highgate, and it's disappointing really that we're not going to bring welfare facilities forward to support that. Two questions. Why hasn't Maldon Harbour Improvement Commissioners been consulted? I've listened very carefully and you haven't mentioned them. And during this 6-week period, I mean, I think I've got the feeling from Councillor Lagan that he may not have even been consulted over this. I think he's intimating that he hasn't been. So what members have actually been consulted over this during the last 6 weeks? The other thing, you know, looking at this, it is a no-brainer. The members will have plenty of opportunity in the future whether or not to agree to this proposal or not. If there's a plan in application, there'll be all sorts of things. So I think based on that, you know, where we are at the moment, as I said, it's a no-brainer. We go for the dollar and then we can all decide afterwards whether or not we really want to do this or not. So, Chairman, based on that, I propose that we agree the recommendations as amended. I believe there was a further amendment. And whilst I don't want to bring it forward as a further recommendation or amendment, I really do think the officers should consider doing a soil search. So I've made my proposal, Chairman, and I hope someone seconds that.
Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Siddle. What I'll do, I'll get the last two questions, then we'll take this to the vote. Okay, Councillor Swain.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple of points. There's obviously a lot of detail to be worked on through the planning and through the design and how these new buildings would be used. That's all to come. But this project is really implementing what is already there in the basis in the CAMP, which was agreed some time ago. The other point I'd like to make is that if we abandon this approach when we have got the chance of some substantial funds to invest in new ideas, equipment, whatever, is what the alternative would be. And I think what one would get would be just occasional piecemeal commercial development of what is there, which would be far from satisfactory. And much more inferior to what we can get through this proposed project.
Thank you, Councillor Swain. And Councillor Bassinger.
Thank you. I'd really just to sort of recap, I think, on what Councillor Fluker said about go for the dollar. I was just wondering, does this budget have to be used absolutely for this project, or can we, is there wriggle room, as say for the interiors, can we then, if there's anything left over, then send some over to do some dredging or whatever needs to be done? I mean, is it worth just going for the dollar? Is there wriggle room, basically?
I'm sure Matt and Leander will come back on that in a second. I don't think there is. I think it has to be spent on the projects that it's on, or I know with a lot of government things it has to go back, but they'll accrue. And Leander has said that it did actually come before members at the Strategy and Resources Committee on the 25th of May. But Matt said he just wants to come back on something with the dredging, I believe. Matt?
I think I covered that, Chair, when I responded previously.
Oh, sorry about that. It came up on. It must have been late coming up on the messaging. Leander, was there anything else you wanted to quickly add just before we vote, or are we all good?
Not at this point, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I haven't had my question answered. About,
right, what was your question again?
The question was which members have been consulted with in the last 6 weeks? Thank you.
That was Strategy and Resources Committee on the 25th of May. I don't know where else it's been.
Chair, if I may, Chair. So the last paper was presented to SNR on the 25th of May. An all-member follow-up email was sent on the 30th and a further all-member email on the 17th of June.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if all members had an email and it went to committee, and that's fair enough. Right, okay. Now we've had a proposal and a seconder, and I'll just read through the recommendations so everybody's clear. Number 1 on the recommendations has changed in the addendum, and it now reads, it is proposed that the following recommendations replace recommendation little 1 as set out in the report. It's got 3 parts. Little 1, that the progress made at compiling an application to the government's Levelling Up Fund Round 2 to invest in the Maldon Historic Waterfront Revival Programme be noted. Little 2, that members agree to commit the council's land and property assets of Hyde Quay, the former River Bailiff hut and the former River Bailiff classroom as a match contribution to the application. Little 3, that the release of £49,200 from a Levelling Up Fund Capacity Grant 2022-23 to be spent on advancing the Maldon Historic Waterfront Revival Programme's planning and application between July and September 2022 be approved. And then the other recommendations as they were, which is little 2, that members agree to commit 10% of the council's revenue allocation for years 2 and 3 of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund to develop collaborative interventions with the North Essex Economic Board where feasible and appropriate. Little 3, that members agree to commit 10% of the council's revenue allocation for the duration of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund to develop collaborative interventions to address health inequalities in the Mid-Essex Alliance where feasible and appropriate. And little 4, that members note the aggressive pace of work required to submit the council's UK Shared Prosperity Fund investment plan and delegate the authority to the corporate leadership team for development and submission in line with our corporate strategies and bring forward new opportunities to be included. Members will be provided with a written fortnightly update. Now that was proposed by Councillor Fluker and seconded by Councillor Siddle. All those in favour?
Chairman, point of order, point of clarity, procedural rules. 4. I'm looking at the minutes of the 25th of May, Strategy and Resources Committee, UK Shared Prosperity and Levelling Up Fund, and I I've only just quickly looked at this and scanned it, but I don't see any mention of Maldon Hyde Quay. But I'm happy for the officer to confirm that to me afterwards, Chairman. And I apologise for interrupting, but I do
no
think
problem. So you're happy to have that in an update. Okay, all those in favour of the recommend. Right. Okay. Yeah, if we do the vote, then Leander, you can do yours after we've taken the vote, because it's just a presentation. Okay, all those in favour?
I've asked for a recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote, yeah.
Chair, sorry. There was mention of amendment to the last recommendation, I believe, earlier on in the discussion.
Yeah, it was to bring forward updates to, which I think is going to happen to the corporate strategies working group. Is that correct?
Yes, so we can add that in along with the 2 weekly updates to all the members, so it will come back to both, so that's fine. So with that amendment, that it also goes to the Strategy and Resources Working Group, Corporate Strategies Working Group. Oh, Corporate Projects Group, we'll get it right in a minute. Okay, the Corporate Projects Group. Yeah, okay, and Councillor Lagan would like a recorded vote.
Because I've got a feeling that I'm going to be the only person to dissent. If that's the will of the chamber, then I'm happy just to have my dissent noted on the minutes.
Okay, well, if we take all those in favour then, please. Yeah, all those against? So just Councillor Lagan. So Councillor Lagan could have his dissent noted. Any abstentions? Councillor Fluker is an abstention. Okay, thank you, members. Leander, would you like to give your presentation now?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen quickly with you. So as members will be aware, each local authority at district, borough, unitary and mayoral level have been allocated some funding via the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. The fund was launched on the 13th of April, which confirmed Maldon District's allocation of £1 million. So as we began to build our investment plan, what we've done is identify the ventures that can be supported at. We've done that by reviewing existing corporate projects and reviewing new opportunities. We've also had £20,000 to support the development of our investment plan, to which we appointed the consultants, which are also assisting us with the Levelling Up Fund bid. At the moment, we're in a challenge and refine stage. We're completing stakeholder engagement and review, challenge of the interventions that have been proposed, and the development of the investment plan and deliverables and expenditure profile. The final review, supporting paperwork and engagement with our local partnership group has been completed. Sorry, the engagement with the local partnership group has been completed and the supporting paperwork is being finalised at the minute, ready for submission by the 1st of August. As I mentioned, Northern District's allocation is £1 million, but that is split over the next 3 financial years. In the first year, which we'll technically only have 6 months of by the time the investment plan is approved this autumn, we've been allocated £59,020 with a minimum capital spend of 10% to support the investment things of community in place, supporting local businesses. In 2022, 2023, 2024, we've been allocated £118,038, again to support the same to investment themes as year one, with a rising minimum capital spend of 13%. And in the final year, which sees us receive the majority of our allocation of £822,942, again, the first investment themes of communities in place, supporting local business and the new investment of people and skills. And this is the rising capital minimum of 20%. Our progress to date, as I explained, we've identified existing corporate projects and new opportunities, and the strategies we've reviewed are our community thematic strategy, our place strategy, and our prosperity thematic strategy. The new opportunities that are arisen from the COVID Economic Recovery and Transformation Programme, the CERT programme, from our partnerships via consultation. In terms of partnership working, there is a clear remit from government for us to collaborate with other areas and also to have a local partnership group. We're very lucky to have one Maldon district adopted with the council, and it's a senior level partnership, and we're already working together to ensure a healthy and prosperous district in relation to place prosperity, community and safety. For collaboration work, we aim to continue our efforts with the North Essex Economic Board, which consists of Braintree, Maldon, Tendring, Oxford District Councils, Colchester, Chelmsford City Councils and Essex County Council. Our proposed interventions, which are theme check and challenge from our local partnership group, under the communities and place investment themes is improvements of the town centres and high streets, community and neighbourhood infrastructure projects, support for active travel enhancements, local sport facility tournaments, teams and leagues, capacity building and infrastructure support for local groups, community engagement schemes for local regeneration, and community measures to reduce the cost of living. Under supporting local business, our proposed interventions are supporting open markets in town centre, retail and service sector, development and promotion of the visitor economy, strengthening local entrepreneurial ecosystems, and support to deliver relevant feasibility studies. And in the final year with our people and skills interventions, we're going to be looking at courses including basic life and career skills, enrichment and volunteering activities. Do members have any questions?
Councillor Swain.
Yes, I don't know if I've missed something or some meeting, but what are these 15 projects, and have they been discussed at all with members?
So the interventions and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund was shared with the Strategy and Resources Committee on the 25th of May, and also the combined update that was sent to members along with the Levelling Up update, which was sent to all members on the 30th of May, a further email on the 17th of June. And also there was an opportunity for members to provide feedback on the interventions that have been proposed, which are listed on our website.
Thank you. Councillor Durham?
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, very good report. Thank you, Leander. And it's a very ambitious list of projects. And £1 million sounds like a lot of money, but actually, when you start breaking it down, it isn't. And there were some very ambitious things on there that potentially could cost an awful lot. And I'm just wondering whether we've been, too, bless you, whether we've been a little bit ambitious with some of those interventions.
Thank you, Councillor Durham. So initially, we had a long list, shall I say, of 42 different projects that we could have possibly supported, and we've actually managed to whittle that down to 18 in consultation with our partners. It is very ambitious, but from the discussions we've had with the local partnership group and our stakeholders, these interventions are particularly pertinent to the district and do achieve the levelling up idea and ideal around Maldon. There is one particularly ambitious project in there, which is that we are looking to deliver the replacement of the pontoon in Burnham on Crouch. So we have allocated a significant amount of budget to be able to bring that forward at an earlier date, along with projects that do deliver for the whole district, and including projects that help to mitigate the cost of living crisis, which we know is an extremely important issue to our residents at the moment. It's ambitious, but I think, you know, the officers that I work with and the members that we work with, we've definitely got the power to do it.
Yeah, thank you very much. But are we going to prioritise just in case, so that we actually hit the projects that are going to have the greatest impact for those in the most need, in case the money runs out?
That will happen, you know, as we mentioned under the levelling up paper, the rising prices and the market, etc., is so unstable at the minute that the funding we've allocated to projects in this phase right now in 2022 could change drastically as we move towards 2024, 2025. And we have had assurance from government that there is a process to refine and to sense check once we move into delivery mode. And we will, of course, be investing in things that matter, and they're not going to be short-lived initiatives. You know, if we do have to make some decisions around what we bring forward, then we will do that in consultation with our local partnership group.
And just before we move on, thank you for that, Leander. At some of the meetings that we've been to, a lot of this is actually being delivered in collaboration with the voluntary service, like Sarah Troop from the CVS. So a lot of it actually is funded and in addition to the money here. So a lot of it is provided free of charge, and it's a case of joined up working and collaborative thinking to get these projects delivered. So it's not all about us paying for them. So that's really good news, and the officers have put an awful lot of work in. Councillor Fluker?
Chairman, just my overarching thought is that officers seem to be consulting with members on the digital platform and then forming decisions based on those consultations. That's certainly something I'm not happy with, but it's probably not for discussion at this moment. But I know I have spoken to the officer by email regarding the new proposed community centre at Southminster, and I do hope that gets the recognition it deserves through this funding. Thank you.
I'm sure that's something that we can put on the agenda for next time and look into. I don't think we can go into that one now, but no, it's noted anyway. Right, I don't think there's any recommendations on that report. That was just a noting report. So we'll move on to agenda item 9, which is Leeds Specialist Preparatory Resource Options, which is Georgina Button. Oh, and just quickly coming in, touching on the pontoon, I've actually brought that forward briefly under any other business, and that's got a lot to do with separate funding. But Georgina, if we could go over to you.
Evening, members. Apologies, I would have been with you in person, but we've got COVID in my house, so I'm but I don't think you really want to see me.
Actually, normally it's very nice to see you, Georgina, but I'm pleased that you're actually in your house at the moment.
Yeah, just to say that this follows on quite nicely in that earlier on, back in October 2021, we recruited the lead specialist prosperity role into the authority, but that really was to deliver the Welcome Back and COVID Economic Recovery funding. It again was a very fast-paced piece of work. We were lucky enough to recruit Leander Cable, who's just presented to you. And so this report really is safeguarding the work that we're doing, and is recommending that we invest in an initial 9-month extension to that contract so that we retain that resource up until October 2023. Now, what is positive around this is that within the LUF funding, there is the 125,000 capacity funding that Matthew Winslow mentioned. Now, until we submit our bid, we're still working through all of the capacity costs. But what I'm quite pleased to say is I'm confident that even though I'm asking members this evening to recommend to council that we should earmark the money from council reserves to pay for the extension of this contract, I'm actually confident I can draw most of that from the £125,000 capacity funding from LUF. It's looking at the moment from the costings Matthew, Winslow and I are working through that we can claim roughly around 47,000 of that from list costs, which would mean I would only be coming to council for a £10,000 investment in this resource. So we'll do our absolute best not to spend this, but I'm asking at this early stage to safeguard that so that we can be assured that we've got the resource in place to get us through to at least October next year. And of course, when officers are asked to put forward any future planning for resource and capacity on a more long-term basis, we could discuss whether if this role needs to be a permanent fixture within the structure, and again that would come to council, to members to make that decision. But for now it's just a short-term extension to make sure that we can deliver on this work.
Thank you, Georgina. And I've got Councillor Durham and then Councillor Siddle and
Well,
Councillor Lagan.
Thank you. I support this. We'd be absolutely mad to lose the resource that we've got with Leander. As you know, she came from Braintree and was one of the better appointments that we've made in a very long time. So, well, no,
yeah, we get a sentiment, a bit of a backhanded
I'm not
compliment.
okay. Yeah, that's not
I think what Councillor Durham's trying to say
Not
is
to
it's a very,
denigrate
very
any
good
other.
addition to Maldon District Council.
not to denigrate any other officers.
I'll second this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank you.
Huebner.
But yes, I would support this.
Okay,
100%.
Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of making this position permanent now, yeah, and in terms of you've got in terms of the LUF funding, and also it says on 3.8 where possible external capacity funding will contribute to. Yeah, is that the funding that we're talking about?
Yeah.
And if we
could spend 47,000 of that. So imagine with the capacity funding, that's going to pay for all officer time, not just for this role.
Okay.
And Leander's time, sorry, the lead specialist prosperity doesn't just work on LUF. So the capacity funding can't just pay for the whole of the role.
Okay.
The work that the role does covers both UK Shared Prosperity Fund and LUF. So yeah, we're going to do our best to use as much.
Okay. So, but however, if we change Ms Cable's role to a permanent position, would we be able to use that funding still if we made that position permanent now? And if we make that position permanent now, surely that gives the council far more security in terms of accessing these things that we now have available to us, and it ensures that that resource can focus much more in terms of these projects and these aspects for the council. So my proposal would be to go straight to little 2 and make this position permanent now. So that's my recommendation.
Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Fluker.
Chairman, I must admit, I'm absolutely I'm absolutely staggered that we're not in private and confidential. We're talking about a member of staff. I mean, anybody can work out now what their salary is. I mean, we don't normally do this type of thing at all. And as I said, I'm staggered that we've now announced to the world how much a member of staff is being paid. So that's my first concern. And of course, the impact on financial resources under Roman 4 on page 35, it's devoid of any information, and Miss Button's just given a huge amount of information to this council, which I think should have been in the report. And although in my mind these things are always built around hope accountancy, in this particular instance I think there's a fair chance that we recover this money. As much as I like Councillor Siddle's proposal, we really don't know where we're going to be in 9 months' time. I mean, for example, if we're not successful with this first round of funding, You know, we've got to look at what the longevity is of this role moving forward. And I mean, on that line, you know, I'd be keen to hear what the 151 officer says, because what we don't want to do is put ourselves in a position like that. Although my counter thought is it would be good to offer the secure employment. So I'll park that there. But I think the 151, I think.
Thank you. Yes, it has a recommendation that's considered as part of the growth bids going forward. And the idea of that is that members can consider that in the context of the budget position at the time and other priorities and pressures. So I think that's provides sort of the full information at the time.
So, Chairman, can I just ask, would the 151 officer advise us to go down that route? And one thing I would make clear at this stage that, you know, I think the work of Miss Cable has been recognised, and I think it's been a huge amount of work. But I do think that we should take the caution of the 151 officer with this.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. And I don't know if I missed it, but could we have the answer to Councillor Siddle's question about if we made that post permanent now, would we still get the funding to use?
Yes, the funding would still be available to use for that resource.
Okay, so I think, Councillor, hang on. Right, I think Councillor Siddle.
I will give way
Yeah, just to say that obviously with it being, if it becomes a permanent cost to the council, then obviously that funding would only be allocated for that first year, and then following years the council would have to include that within its budget, as Mr. Leslie has explained. So again, normally if it's a permanent fixture, I'd have to put it through as a supplementary growth bid. If it's not at the appropriate time for budgeting, I can do that. I can put in a supplementary growth bid to make it permanent. But this was just to make, if I'm being perfectly honest, is to make sure that we don't lose this member of staff in the short term, and to give us that assurance in that short term. And we would look at those long-term solutions, you know, as soon as we can, to secure further or long-term resource.
The first one, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Miss Button. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you for letting me have a second go, Chairman. I mean, much as I like the idea as suggested, I do think this is too hasty and we should go through the appropriate channels. I'm not against it.
Oh, sorry.
But
yeah,
I don't feel
quite
brave enough to support it at this stage.
Yeah, I think so. I think Councillor Siddle.
So early on we had the provisional outturn, and if we remember that at that particular point, what was presented to us was that the council is, in terms of its budget at the end of that year, was actually balanced, and at the moment we do have the resources available for staffing. So therefore, I feel that we, for the council's point of view, let alone anything else, but in terms of the council's point of view, and in terms of the gaps that we know exist in terms of officers within this council, we need to ensure that this position is permanent, and is permanent not necessarily just for the person who's doing it now, but in terms of the future prosperity of the district and this council. And the last 9 months has proved that this role is necessary for this council, no matter what happens in the future. We will always need this type of role. With the way that the economy has happened over the last 12 years, we have all got poorer. The district has got poorer. So therefore, we need this resource.
Okay, right, Councillor Stamp, really briefly, because it's
very
fine
briefly, and I'm not going to
to
apologise, but I'm really pleased Councillor Siddle has changed his tune. When he was chairman of SNR and I was the leader, I could get anything past him. So I'm really quite pleased that he's supporting the staff in this way for the finances. But I'm sorry, I don't agree. I'm quite happy to support it in the short term, but not the long. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we'll go to the first vote, which was seconded, and that was to vote on little one. and Little 2 together, that members support the recommendation of an initial 9-month extension to the existing lead specialist prosperity contract, retaining to current resource until October 2023. And the members note that if appropriate, this role will be considered and included in the Strategy, Performance and Governance Directorate 2023-24 growth bid as a permanent addition to the Council's workforce structure. So we'll vote on this motion first and then see how the voting goes. All those in favour? Okay, so that's carried as it was during the day. Okay, thank you, Georgina. Okay, so that is carried. The recommendations as they were submitted and proposed by Councillor Durham in the first instance. Okay, moving on to agenda item 10, which is approvable in principle to apply for grant funding for Woodfield, Cottages, Heybridge through Historic England's partnership schemes in conservation areas. And this is Mr. Howson, Tim Howson, giving this report, and this is going to be quite a tricky one. Mr. Howson. Oh, good luck, members.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I might be showing you some slides. I think it helps to actually see what I'm talking about. Basically, Historic England has encouraged Maldon District Council to apply for grant funding through their partnership schemes in conservation areas, which has this rather awkward acronym PSICA, which they pronounce SEEKA. The aim of the scheme would be to improve the character and appearance of Woodfield Cottages in Heybridge. The last time this particular type of scheme was run in the Maldon District between 1998 and 2001, when a conservation area partnership scheme was ran in the Maldon conservation area. That involved £340,000 of enhancement work, over £100,000 of which consisted of repair to listed private houses. So there is a local precedent for this sort of project, albeit over 20 years ago. These schemes are run by local authorities. They are based on a partnership between Historic England, the local authority, and in some cases other funding bodies. You probably all remember me speaking about Woodfield Cottages at previous meetings of this committee. They are really important historic buildings. 41 cottages built in 1873 for the employees of Bentl's Agricultural Works. They are, slide's not changing. Oh yeah, there we go. So they are a pioneering example of shuttered concrete construction, and originally had very early examples of flat roofs, as shown in this reconstruction drawing. Unfortunately, the flat roofs leaked, so they had to have the pitched roofs in 1918, but those octagonal chimney stacks remain visible in the roof spaces. Woodfield Cottages have always been the most difficult statutorily listed houses in the district to manage. Some of the properties are in poor condition, and there has been a high volume of unauthorised alteration over many years since the cottages were first listed in 1971. We've had little success tackling the issues through conventional enforcement action, partly because the cottages had already been quite altered by the time they were first listed, but also they are among the smallest houses available locally. Each house has just 4 rooms. They tend to attract first-time buyers and pensioners, often it seems with limited disposable income. In my experience, many of the residents are elderly and some are vulnerable. Enforcement action has been taken in some instances, but the cases are usually very difficult to resolve and can cause considerable distress. Historic England had acknowledged the particular challenges that the cottages present, and back in 2019, Tony Calladine, who's the director of the Eastern region, suggested that if the cottages were designated a conservation area, the area would become eligible for funding from Historic England through a SEEKA scheme, which could be used to tackle some of the challenges in the area. It's notoriously difficult to make a successful bid for this funding, but In this instance, the concept already has high-level support at Historic England, and from my perspective, it's a great opportunity to establish one of the first conservation area partnership schemes in Essex for several years, and address long-standing issues as one of the most challenging heritage sites in the district. The Woodfield Cottages Conservation Area was designated by this committee in January of this year, alongside an innovative local listed building consent order, which grants automatic consent for restoration work. So cutting out the bureaucracy around listed building consent that can deter people from working with the council. The conservation area document identified various enhancement opportunities, such as restoring the original design of front windows and doors, albeit incorporating double glazing, which would improve thermal efficiency, and which, with rising fuel prices, is of great concern to many of the residents. Would include the removal of overscaled and poorly detailed brick porches, and there's the opportunity to replace some prominent unsympathetic boundary treatments. It's not just about buildings, it's about people too. Setting up a grant scheme for Woodfield Cottages would support local businesses and craftspeople, such as Lee Billings Joinery Firm, based in Heybridge. Lee's workshop is just around the corner from the cottages, and he is one of the main local contractors producing traditional joinery. He has a team of 4 guys on the tools, including one who started with him as an apprentice, and he's currently looking for another apprentice. Without traditional craftsmen like Lee, the conservation of our historic buildings would not be possible. He's able to make bespoke windows and doors matching those the cottages had originally, but including double glazing that's so discreet you can hardly tell it's double glazed. And Lee is one of the contractors who's provided estimates upon which the grant proposals are based. On the right is Pam Wickenden, one of the residents of the cottages, who has expressed an interest in applying for grant funding should it become available. She is 83 and has various health problems. She relies on her neighbours for a lot of help with a lot of things. And one of the wonderful things about the cottages is that there's a really strong sense of community there, with neighbours helping one another out. Mrs. Wickenden's late husband installed the current windows himself around 30 years ago. They're quite decayed, thermally inefficient, and she can't actually open them. And they're at the end of their serviceable life. To install the cheapest plastic windows, which would harm the character of the buildings and the area, would cost around a third of the amount needed for sympathetic double-glazed timber sash windows of the sort that Lee Billings can make. So I've done some preliminary research into how much money is needed to make a difference. I obtained estimates from local contractors, including Lee Billings, and calculated that to implement all of the main enhancement opportunities would be around £340,000, but yeah, for various reasons I think that's unrealistic. So I assessed the enhancement opportunities in terms of whether they represent a high, medium or low priority, based on the prominence of the cottage, the degree of unsympathetic alteration, and owners expressed wish to undertake enhancement work and to apply for grant funding if it became available. Targeting just medium and high priority cases, that's 21 cottages, would cost around £232,000. If owners were required to contribute 20% towards the cost of the work, the total required from Historic England and Maldon District Council would be about £186,000, or £93,000 each, assuming a 50-50 split between Historic England and Maldon District Council. And Historic England have now confirmed in writing that they would be willing in principle to contribute 50% match funding for this scenario, targeting the high and medium priority cases, for a grant scheme that would commence in April 2023. Then there is the option of targeting just the highest priority cases, which I've identified as 13 cottages, which is estimated to cost around £137,000. And then the total required for Historic England and Maldon District would be 110 or £55,000 each. assuming a 50-50 split between Historic England and Maldon District Council. And then spread over the 3 years, that would work out on average about £18,000 per year from both Historic England and Maldon District Council. But grants in this scheme are offered within 3 years and then paid out within 5, so the average figure would almost certainly be lower. I would just say that the exercise of identifying priority cases has been undertaken simply to estimate what might be achieved with different amounts of funding. The cottages highlighted are not necessarily the ones that the funding would go to, not least because it's unlikely that all residents will want to participate. But all residents would effectively be eligible to apply for relevant work, although in deciding what grant money to be spent, Historic England needs to be satisfied that we do so in accordance with the criteria aimed at achieving the maximum level of advancement. So, in conclusion, Woodfield Cottages Conservation Area is on the Council's Heritage Risk Register. The cottages are among the most challenging listed buildings in the district due to their poor condition and operation. 2023 will be the 150th anniversary since the cottages were first built. And I think it would be excellent if these important historic buildings could celebrate that anniversary with the launch of a grant scheme that secured their future. So this report, for purposes of this report, I seek the committee's approval to formally apply for grant funding from Historic England and to obtain agreement in principle to contribute match funding should the application be successful.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howson. Right, okay. Then we have 2 recommendations, but I think what I'll do, rather than discuss the actual recommendations now, I think we should go to the floor first and discuss it. Basically, it's just whether we want to take this forward, and what if we do give approval, how much we're going to put into it. So I think you'd better debate it first and then ask for a proposal afterwards. Thank you, Councillor Fluke. Oh, and then Councillor Durham, then Councillor Huber.
Chairman, I'll give way to everybody, but I just wanted to declare and say that I'm a director of several joinery companies, all of which produce bespoke joinery for some of the most historic projects in Essex. And I'll just declare that it is on my register of interest, Chairman, but I'll just declare that.
Thanks, because I'm sure that we'll go out to tender at some stage in the future. Right, okay, so I have got Councillor Durham, Councillor Huebner, I better write these down. So it's Durham, so Councillor Durham, then Councillor Huebner, then Councillor Swain.
Thank you, Chairman. I thought for one moment that Councillor Fluker was going to offer to make all the windows for nothing, but that would have been very magnanimous. Yeah. But no, Chairman. Yes, of course we've got to go and try and get as much grant funding to carry out this work as possible. When we designated this conservation area, some of the residents really were very concerned that it was going to cost their money. And as Mr. Howson has quite rightly said, these people are at the bottom of the financial scale and are certainly not in a position to be spending money themselves. So yeah, it's only right and proper. This is a unique area. We recognised that earlier this year, as you said. So it would be rather odd for us to completely ignore any opportunities to bring it up to a good standard. And it was mentioned at the time that the ideal situation would be to get some standardisation across the various homes where they'd been worked on over the years. So yeah, I mean, yes, fundamentally we should be going for as much grant funding from wherever it comes from as possible.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Swain.
Yes, well, I supported the idea of it being treated as a conservation area when Mr. Howson put that project forward. But this is quite a different thing. We're talking about match funding, i.e. 50% funding from the council for individuals' private properties. And that seems very strange to me and not really what we should be doing. What I would ask Mr. Howson is there funding available for individual owners if they do wish to implement the recommendations that you would have for their individual properties?
Mr. Howson?
So it's not without precedent, this sort of scheme. As I mentioned, the Maldon Conservation Area Partnership Scheme grant funded owners of private properties around 20 years ago. And in fact, until 2016, this council had an annual historic buildings repair budget to support owners with the additional expense of repairing historic buildings. So that was cut in 2016. So for the past 6 years, the council has provided no financial assistance towards the conservation of the historic environment. I think it can also be considered in terms of, not only repairs but also improving the sustainability of the building stock and the wider economic benefits of supporting trade and jobs. But in terms of what works are actually grant funded, we would need to prepare a delivery plan with a clear criteria of what is eligible.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, I've got Councillor Hubner next.
Yes, so lucky old Heybridge. It's my area. Yes, so it's nice to see that some money's coming to Heybridge. And yes, I would support this.
Right, Councillor Swain.
Yes, I didn't get an answer to my second question about whether individuals could have access to grants.
Yeah, Mr. Leslie's going to answer that, but he said we'll do that after we've taken all the hands that are up. So, Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just say briefly that I don't recognise any of these costs, particularly with slim light double glazing. And whilst I'm talking about slim light double glazing, I see that my friend is, in this particular case, is advocating it, but I know he doesn't in Grenville Terrace. So perhaps we could have a conversation about that offline. Chairman, it is what it is, but I think over the last 10 years, I've spent probably in excess of £250,000 conserving my property, which Historic England now says is one of the most important of its type in the region. But I never got any help. Not at the beginning when I first bought it, nothing. And I do find this is quite interesting, and not least of all, Chairman, because I'm sure you've already done it, but if one goes on to Zoopla, you can see that these properties change hands for anything up to £250,000. Now, I'm not saying that's not a reason to support these people, and I don't doubt that some of these people might not own their own properties, and they might not be in a position to actually bring them up to the standard that's required. But my thought is if we have people there that are not in a position to carry out these repairs, we should look at, rather than giving them grant funding, we should look at supporting them through loans or even non-interest loans where we recover the money through a charge on the property at a later date. This is taxpayers' money. I think it's a fabulous idea, but later on this evening, we'll be talking about spending more of council money. We've spoken about council money being spent tonight. Councillor Siddle talks towards a balanced budget. But if we carry on like this, we won't have that balanced budget. And, Mr. Howson knows how passionate I am about conservation and buildings, old buildings generally. But I really don't feel that I can support this proposal at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just butt in, and I'm sure that Mr. Leslie will come back later. I did mention about putting a charge on properties in a meeting earlier. I don't know what the outcome was, but I did raise whether we could. Okay, right, I've got Councillor Stamp and then Councillor Siddle. Oh, and then Councillor Lagan. And then we'll ask Mr. Leslie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel very uncomfortable about it, actually. I think we're turning around and saying we're going to put, I don't know how many thousands per property. And you can't just do that for so many people in the district. You've got many people who can't afford it, and I understand its heritage. And I think if Councillor Nunn's watching me, he'll never speak to me again at the moment. And I'm sure we should have had some input from Councillor Nunn. Have we had any input from Councillor Nunn on this?
I think so.
Well, I would have thought it would have been really appropriate if he had commented, but no, I don't feel comfortable. Is it means tested? Can people afford it? Are we going to invest in it and then going to sell it for even more money because it goes up to a better standard? What safeguards have we got? I know that sounds really mean, and please forgive me if you lived there, and please forgive me, Councillor Hubener. But I don't feel at the moment, with the information I've got, I can actually support it, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Siddle, and then Councillor Lagan, and then Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's interesting again that a few years ago we had a fund that went towards helping preserve our heritage, and that seems to have disappeared. Could we, if you look at 3.10 on page 38, and it says about the high priority cases, in terms of a high priority case, Mr. Howson, is that something where it's a high priority because of the condition of the building, or it's a high priority because it's a resident who doesn't necessarily have the funding themselves to do it? So could you clarify what high priority means?
It's based on the prominence of the cottage and the degree of unsympathetic alteration. So the degree of difference the improvements would make. And I've also factored in whether the owners have already expressed an interest in applying for grant funding should it become available. But basically, they're the buildings with the most unsympathetic later alterations, and so benefit greater from the funding.
Okay, so it's not necessarily about the financial hardship of the people that live there, perhaps, which would be
no.
Okay, because that in a way to me would make someone a higher priority. Is the fact that perhaps they didn't have the financial security themselves to do the work, because someone who perhaps has a job and is able to pay for these things themselves, that would make them perhaps a less priority, but they could be living in one of these ones that needs more work. So there's a strange correlation here between. I in many ways I think it's a very good idea, and maybe it should be broader. Maybe we should be looking at this in a broader aspect across the district rather than these particular cottages. And maybe that would be a more viable proposal than just the cottages. I don't know.
Thank you, Councillor Siddle. Right, we're going to wrap this up. Councillor Thompson, because we're going way over time now. So Councillor Thompson, because we've got a lot of agendas to get through. It's already 9:15.
I'll try and be quick. Yes, I do remember the grants that ceased in 2016 to many people's members and officers' chagrin, and I'm afraid I voted for that because we haven't got the money. It's the same now. Still, I'd love to give money away to every worthy project, but you can't. We're giving taxpayers who've got maybe less money than the people living in Woodfield cottages. I don't know. How can we tell? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Swain, Councillor Swain, you can be really quick.
Yes.
Oh, and Councillor Lagan, but we've really quick.
I think the distinction between different categories and it leads to some endless disputes.
Yes. Good point. Okay, Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thanks. I am going to take my 2 minutes because you missed me out last time and you pushed me to the back this time. So siltation is obviously an important thing. So hang on, let me.
It wasn't intentional.
Every
Councillor Lagan.
single second. I'm ribbing you. I've lost my train of thought. There's two things. Yeah, that's it. No, like 5, I think I can have. There's a couple of things here. 3.9. And I'm not clever enough to spot that, but my colleague was. It talks about if owners were required to contribute 20% towards the cost of the work, would they have to contribute towards the cost of the work? Is my first question.
That's the model that I suggested. Usually owners are expected to contribute something, but Historic England's advice was that we kept the percentage pretty low to make it more likely that people would engage with it.
Okay, thank you very much. That's my first point, and I've still got a minute left. So as a committee, we agreed to have this designated as a conservation area, And Bentall's is both my mum and dad worked for Bentall's many years ago, so I do have a soft spot for it, of course. But they never sailed on barges in the silt. But if the towers were still here, I think we'd be fighting to keep that. And these buildings are pretty unique, and they are people's homes and they are people's lives we're talking about. So I'm actually very much in favour of looking at this. And again, I've got a feeling that I'm on a losing streak. But just step back from it for a moment, because we've said it's a conservation area. Yes, there's match funding. We've just gone for funding on something that I don't particularly think we should have done, but we're going to do it. Maybe we should just have a go at this anyway and see what comes out of it. And I think it's a good thing, because as Mr. Howson said, Mr. Howson gives us a report time and time again that gives me the detail that I like to be able to make a determined decision. So I want to commend Mr. Howson on that. And unlike other members, I think sometimes we just have to put our hands in our pockets to preserve what we may lose going forward and make people's lives better. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Right, you're welcome, Councillor Logan. Right, Mr. Ledger's got a few answers to questions. Then we're going to go straight to we'll put the proposals forward if we go and see who we get for proposing and seconding, and the other recommendations forward, and then we can vote. And we've got a lot to get through tonight.
Thank you, Chair. Just in my capacity, just like to point out the financial side of it. So the cost to the council, obviously, circa 55,000, depending on how much work is done, up to perhaps £95,000. Obviously, we've had requests for historic assets in the past come to council, so I think there's understanding about the rationale of priorities around those as well. Obviously, there's private houses, so there's equality in terms of the rationale around that, and obviously there is heritage justification, but obviously it again comes down to the priorities of the council. We talked about interest-free loans. Obviously, they come with administration costs, and also money isn't free. The value, say, if we put land charges of money in 10 years, 20 years, is obviously a lot less than it would be originally when we put it down.
Okay, right, members, we haven't had a proposal yet, but the recommendations are, little one, that approval is given to apply for partnership schemes in conservation areas funding from Historic England to support the restoration of Woodfield, Cottages, Heybridge, and little two, that approval in principle is given to contribute match funding between circa 55,000 and 95,000 towards the grant scheme if an application for match funding from Historic England is successful. And if I'm right, we're not claiming to get any funds back. Is that right?
If we spend the 55,000,
yeah,
that's our cost.
That's at our cost, yeah. So, okay. Do I have a proposer and a seconder? Okay, a seconder. Okay, all those members in favour? That's 4. All those against? So that is also 4. Any abstentions? 2. Oh, that's not fair. That's really not fair. Oh, I was hoping not to have to do this. I have to say, although I want to see this going forwards, I have got concerns that none of the other listed housings or conservation areas are going to get funding for this. No, they're not, but we don't fund anybody else's privately owned houses. Good grief, this is a really tricky one. God, there's me asking everybody else to hurry up. Sorry? I know they are. Yeah. I have to say that as this proposal is here now, I'm not comfortable that we're funding some privately owned houses and not others. I like the scheme, and I do think perhaps if it came forward in a different format, it might be more palatable. But for me, the fact we're only supporting a few house owners, I'm going to cast the chairman's vote and vote against this one. So sorry, members, that's not carried. But Tim, I like the hard work that you've done, and I think I'd almost like to see it come back in a different format where the house owners put more into this and not expect the taxpayers and the rest of the district to fund their privately owned homes. Okay, right. Moving on. Agenda item 11, Maldon District Council Allocations Policy, which is Damien Geller on pages 47 to 104. Okay, Damien.
Thank you. I'm going to try and good evening, members. I'm going to try and present this, and hopefully this will be a nice short one. The report before you relates to the updating of the council's housing allocations policy. The council's housing allocations policy is underpinned and administered through the Gateway Home Choice Partnership. The partnership is made up of 7 councils, including Maldon, who share a common policy and letting system. Now, officers from the partnership will meet regularly to discuss legislative matters, policy changes and cases of note. And these will in turn inform updates to the allocations policy, both major and minor. Now, the minor updates to the allocations policy, such as the kind you have in front of you, comprise of such changes typically like points of clarification. So, for example, armed forces are now defined as armed forces of the Crown. They also provide examples for the correct application of the policy that gives officers guidance as to discretion. Facilities grant, this should read allocations policies. My apologies there. So that's really the update. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Councillor Swain.
Yes, it's very interesting, all of this, and quite new to me. But I noticed that we're working with a number of other authorities on this. Is there a corresponding obligation on the various authorities to try and ensure they have the accommodation available to minimise, should we say, transfers of people between districts other than ones who are opting for that? In other words, do the authorities individually aim to have sufficient accommodation to avoid the need for people to be placed in other authorities' areas?
There's a couple of different ways to answer that. If you don't mind, can I provide a full response? But that's detailed.
Thank you. Yes, please. Oh, sorry. Yes, no, I'm happy with the written report afterwards. Yeah, are you okay with that, members? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. So, do we all agree this recommendation? Agreed. Thank you, members. Okay, thank you, Mr. Geller. Okay, agenda item 12, which is customer strategy key principles on pages 105 to 108, and that's Sue Green. Well done.
Good evening, members, and thank you very much for considering this report. This is coming to you to consider as part of the review of our existing customer strategy that was originally approved in 2016. At that time, the strategy consisted of 8 key principles, and we are now refreshing that strategy, just reflecting on whether those key principles are still relevant. So what is before members tonight is 8 key principles that we're asking members to consider, and if they agree, endorse, so that can form the basis of the refreshed customer strategy. In addition to the original 8 key principles, there are a couple of other things that we ask our members to consider. The first is the fact that the new customer strategy, we would want to have a slight change of focus. When the original strategy was agreed in 2016, whilst the approach was digital by default and encouraging channel shift, we were at a point where there was limited numbers of people that were residents that were using our online services. Since COVID and the pandemic, what we have found is that the level of channel shift has increased significantly, and we have more than 90% of our residents that now transact with us online. So the shift for us now is actually looking at those residents that have been left behind and perhaps aren't able to access our digital services. So they're commonly referred to as those that are digitally excluded. So the new strategy will have a much greater focus on those residents that are digitally excluded and to see how they can be supported, either to become digitally included and access those services, or if that's not possible, to provide that enhanced level of service that they may require, which could be a telephone service, or indeed for some of our residents, the most appropriate service would be a face-to-face service. So the focus very much now is on almost flipping the coin in terms of the focus now being about sustaining the channel shift that we've achieved, but actually much more help for those that perhaps aren't able to use their digital services. The second thing that we're asking members to consider is the question of whether our customer services team actually needs to be co-located with our back office services. So with the sort of high number of residents that are transacting with us online, and the relatively small number of customers that we are delivering their face-to-face services for, we feel there isn't necessarily a need for the two to be co-located. And actually we could look at our customers team possibly delivering services with one of our partners, or looking at possibly an alternative focus, which is perhaps some of our partners in the district able to deliver some of that signposting and some of our more sort of straightforward responses that our customers do approach us for. What we have learned since we've reopened our customer service in April is that the two most common things that are that customers are coming to see us about is actually collecting pink sacks or wanting pink sacks, or dropping documents off to us. So those are the two predominant things that we are seeing our residents come to us for, and those things could very easily be signposted through some of our key partners. So what we have done in the report is we've identified those kind of key principles that we are asking members to approve. And as you'll see in the report, they are summarised as providing that right first time service delivery, so we get it right at the first point, and that customers aren't having to come back to us time and time again. Try to resolve those inquiries at the very first point of contact, making it easy for people to deal with this and to resolve them either quickly through the website, and as members will be aware, we have a website project that is very much looking at how can we make the website accessible and for customers to be able to transact on this as quickly as possible and find the information they need. Helping customers to help themselves, so that's making our services nice and easy to use, and as I mentioned before, working with our partners to support digital inclusion, and also having access to a kind of a wider range of services, so working very closely with our partners and looking at self-help through budgeting advice, health and wellbeing advice, training and skills. And as we said before, it's really making sure that those that can't use their digital services do have access to those face-to-face services when they need them. The next priorities is very much looking at focusing on the end-to-end service delivery, so looking at it from the customer's perspective and making things as easy as possible for them, not just looking at parts of the service, but looking at the service as a whole, as the customer would see it. The next principle is learning from our customer feedback, so making it as easy as possible for customers to provide that feedback, and then using the results of those feedback, whether it be compliments or complaints, to actually help inform our services and make improvements. One of the really key ones is about the culture and behaviour of our staff, so really putting that customer excellence at the heart of everything that we do and embedding that in our core values, and also having very strong leadership to ensure that those cultures and behaviours are very much embedded across the organisation, and that we lead by example. And that's the whole of our leadership team, both members and officers. The last one was really encouraging access to services using the most efficient and cost-effective channels. So that's a really important one, because going forward, the funding that we have to deliver services is finite, and the demands that we have is ever increasing, and that isn't going to change with the increased properties that are being developed in the district, the additional residents that will be requiring access to service, the pressures that our residents face with the cost of living pressures, and the issues they're going to be facing, financial issues. So we are seeing an increased demand on our services, and we have a finite resource, so it's about how can we deliver those in the most cost efficient way going forward. So those were the original principles that we had in our original strategy 6 years ago. We do feel that those are still relevant and should still form the core of our customer strategy going forward. So the request tonight is for members to endorse those key principles set out in section 4 and to approve those so that we can continue to develop the full customer strategy and bring those back to members before the end of this year with a updated and revised document. The new customer strategy will be subject to public consultation before it gets brought back to members for final endorsement. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Sue. I've got two people want to speak before we get to the recommendations. Councillor Stamp and Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of points. People don't actually know the council offices are open for business. I get many people still contacting me because, to be fair, I didn't know how we're open for business until I came for a meeting the other day. So I think information's pretty sparse. Pink sacks, yes, people are going to want to go for pink sacks because half of Steeple and other areas still haven't got their pink sacks delivered. And I had a complaint yesterday from a councillor regarding still not having the pink sacks for half the village. And they were arguing and saying, well, we're paying our council tax, why are we not getting it? So, you know, if these services were being given, you most probably won't get the complaints. So it's still not being delivered. Website. I have read the report, by the way. I've got lots of green markings on it. I'm not going to take every opportunity to speak because I know other members want to talk on it. The website's very difficult to navigate. We know how hard it is for members to use. I spoke to our fantastic ICT team the other day when we did the thing in Moot Hall in Maldon, and we know it's a difficult website to navigate. Why aren't we doing something about it? How many times do we get called or message from residents? I've given up trying to actually log on. I can't manage it. I'd like to actually congratulate FreshServe because I've passed over so many queries and passed private information on for our officers to ring the residents because they can't get through. They can't get through on the phone. They can't get through on the internet, on the website. I've put on here, you've put strong positive leadership team and members lead by example. I think generally we do lead by example for culture and behaviour. How are we going to reach the hard to reach residents if you can't reach them now? How are we going to reach them? Thank you. There's quite a lot there, but I'm very passionate about this. I don't think we open the telephone lines early enough, and I don't think we give enough customer service. And Mr. Richard Holmes is not in my eye line because he would be looking at me because I bring it up every time. So I hope this is going to work, but you know, not everybody can go online. Thank you.
I raise exactly the same concerns, Councillor Stamp, because I'm a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to technology. Sue, I don't know if you've got any strategies for helping the hard to reach people or if they'll come forward to us in a report.
So I think if I can respond to the issues that have been raised. So in terms of the council offices being open, we have got a very finite resource, and that resource is currently being directed to the face-to-face services to the customers that are vulnerable and need that face-to-face service. So what's happening at the moment is customers are being triaged. So if they contact us and they telephone us, we will try and deal with it by telephone. But if we're not able to, then we will offer a face-to-face service. What we are resolved to do under the current structure is to provide a walk-in service for all of our residents. The service we've got is very much directed to those vulnerable residents. And if I can refer members to some of our earlier presentations where the whole ethos of our current resources is built on the vast majority of our residents self-serving, which actually, as I mentioned at the start of the presentation, we have more than 90% of our residents now that do self-serve, and we have about 7% of our residents that do use telephone contact, with a very tiny proportion of residents that need that face-to-face. So hopefully members will understand that that is our current approach. There are obviously customers that we haven't reached, and very much That's where we are looking to work in partnership and reaching out to our partners and to parish town councils to actually help us identify if we have got residents that do need that additional support, and absolutely we're able to provide that. If I've missed anything out in the response, so the digital inclusion, we're certainly working with partners, including the CVS. We have quite a big project working with the CVS that provide those weekly drop-in sessions for those that do want to access digital services. And actually, it isn't just about the council saving money in terms of it's cheaper to deliver services online. Actually, there's huge benefits for the residents in terms of reducing social isolation, being able to access sort of cheaper products. So I think there's some surveys that have been done that shows that overall in the course of the year, a resident can save about £500 a year by accessing and buying things online. So there are much wider benefits for our residents, but absolutely accept that that isn't going to be appropriate for everybody. And in terms of the website, we currently have a big project where we are looking at not just improving the content of the website, but actually the layout, and moving to our own in-house service so that we can control the actual layout of the website, because we have procured a website some years ago which members may be aware of, which does very much limit what we're able to do with it. We're very much bound by the limits of the technology. So we have recognised that, and we are now investing in an updated website, actually a new website that will deliver actually what we need, rather than what we are provided with by our current provider. So it is a project. We have got members that are working on that project and are inputting into that, and we have done a presentation to members in the last week that's setting out the direction of travel for that website project.
Thanks. But I raised at the meeting last week, I still don't like everything going digitally. My residents don't like it, but we are where we are. But anyway, Councillor Stamp, really quickly.
It's a quick comeback. Can we just have clarity that it went up to 90% because of the pandemic? There was no other option. So it's all right saying it went up to 90%, the channel shift and people using it. Nothing else was available for them to use. And I would think a lot of people weren't accessing the service because they didn't need them. Thank you.
Yeah, and I have to, on my comeback, I get comments from my ward members that they can't get hold of any nobody. I mean, the contact centre are very good, but they're only open 10 till 4, and people who work find it difficult, and everybody phones at lunchtime. But I mean, they're things we can look at going forwards. Right, I'm going to move on quickly now. I have got Councillor Lagan, Councillor Shaughnessy, and then Councillor Swain, but we must keep this really short because it is 20 to 10, and this is just really a report for noting. But Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, I think it's a report for noting, Chair, and thank you, but I think it's also really important, I think, to
it is,
rubber stamp. I mean, yeah, we've had debates going on for 6 hours in the past, you know. Some members at the time left because obviously they were tired, but others stayed the course, but that's past. Channel shift, yeah, that's a great word. The consultant must have got paid a fortune for that, and I also think that Councillor Stamp talks about, you know, and I understand I'm sounding very, very negative tonight, but I'm a bit miffed about certain things. That 90% channel shift that we had was because of COVID, so we can't congratulate ourselves for that. You know, we don't know whether we would have been better or not. I just go back to what you said about residents contacting you, you know, and I think that apart from the overdevelopment of the district, no schools, no hospitals, no doctors, no pink sacks, I think people come at me because they want to come to the council offices. You know, we branded our residents customers in so many things. You know, again, that's part of the transformation where we want to serve, and I thought it was a council, and we are supposed to serve the residents of the district. So I think if the pandemic hadn't happened, we would still have a physical place for people to go, and I think we should do that. I think, and I don't think people. I know Miss Green is working tirelessly to make things better, and I've always been impressed with what's been here, but I don't think it's working. You know, you hit social media, our reputation is diabolical. You can't get through. Every 5 minutes we seem to be getting an email that the phone system's down. It's going to be half an hour before you can reach somebody. That's not customer service, you know. So maybe we're taking the subject too wide. You know, we're trying to eat the elephant in one bite. Maybe we should try and eat the elephant one bite at a time, because it's not working.
I agree with your sentiments. Right, Mr. Holmes would like to come in now.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, obviously, just to reiterate what Sue has said, I mean, these are the key principles, and obviously the customer strategy will come back. But this is essentially about choice. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. People didn't have a choice in terms of the pandemic. A lot of people's transactions have shifted. Some will stay that way. Others will want to go back to something more traditional. Now, whether, without the pandemic, this was the course we were on. And no doubt the pandemic accelerated dramatically for all of us, that shift, but the model is set up to get people to self-serve, and it's completely designed around that. That is your choice, members. So what we will do is, when we come back with this customer strategy, we'll give you some options, because if you wanted greater telephony, you wanted longer periods of opening, then obviously that is a choice, but that will mean that we'll have to put some resource back, because we absolutely took it out on the basis that we expected people to transact with us in a different way. So I think all of your comments are valuable this evening. I certainly hear what you're saying. I know Ms Green will actually look at those as we go through. So when it comes back, you will have some options and choices, and we'll give you some facts and figures, because we know that people are transacting with us. We know what people are coming through the front doors to transact with us over. You'd be surprised what they come to see us about, and it's not necessarily what you're thinking they do as well. It's very transactional. It's pink sacks and things like that, rather than in-depth matters, because they are actually going online and they are transacting with us in a different way. So I think we'll give you some more facts and figures for you to make some decisions a bit later.
Actually, that certainly helps me, the fact that we'll get more in depth on this, and we are just nurturing support. Now, Councillor Shaughnessy, we haven't heard from you tonight, so Councillor Shaughnessy.
Thank you. The elderly and their lack of technology has been concerning me for a long time. And I've had an example of it this week, where a 90-year-old gentleman with an invalid wife was wanting something taken from his house, by the waste team. He wasn't able to pay for this online. And he was told, well, you need to find a friend to do it for you. Okay, it turns out I was that friend for him, because it's what you do, isn't it? You do anything for your ward members. So I just wanted to illustrate that. Now, I'm hoping, I'm really pleased that that face-to-face speaking with residents is finally, properly coming on board, and I thank Ms Green for that. But also other departments, for instance, this the department that I've just mentioned, I hope as soon as this, comes on board, and why can't it come on board tomorrow, that these other departments will say to these very elderly people, if they phone up and they can't manage the IT, you can come in and talk to somebody face to face about this, and you can pay for your service to that person face to face, instead of being told, no, you have to pay this fee online. There's no other way around it, hence my involvement. So other departments need to take this on board and tell people that, we can't deal with this online, I'm really sorry, but do come and have a face-to-face with somebody, and they will help you. They will help you through this. You will be able to pay it at reception or wherever. That needs to happen. It needs to happen tomorrow.
And Mr Holmes has assured me that the team is going to look into it. Now, briefly, Councillor Bassender, this is the last comment on this one before we move forward.
I'll do it quickly then. I absolutely agree that the telephone is probably, that's where most of my complaints come from the residents phoning up me saying, they can't get in touch. So I think the telephones, but I think Mr Holmes is absolutely correct that regardless of the pandemic, we were definitely going on the IT route. And I think that's the key. I think when this comes back, we should either look at maybe a separate website or something that is easier and far more logical than the website that we've got. So maybe it's a sort of a hub that people go to for this specific sort of face-to-face stuff. And we still need the face-to-face, and we certainly need the telephone, but certainly a simpler form of IT is what we need, because that's definitely the way it's going.
Right, thank you, Ms. I'm not taking any more questions. I already said it's 10 to 10. Right, briefly, the recommendation is that members know. Excellent. Right, okay, thank you, members. I'm sorry for the ones I didn't let speak, but I've been very indulgent tonight. Oh, right. Okay. And so now we are on agenda item 13. Planning Policy Working Group Annual Report, pages 109 to 112. And that is Anne Shorland. Anne, I'm sorry you had a long night. Hopefully she's still there. If she's not there, Mr. Holmes, could you give this report? Oh, sorry, Matt, Mr. Winslow, you're going to give this report. I do apologise.
That's fine, not a problem at all. So, in respect of the report in front of you, I'm sure members will know the background. On the 23rd of February, the council agreed to review its local development plan and changed its statutory timetable in order to do this. It then, to support this work, council agreed to set up a planning policy working group. The terms of reference for the working group are in 3.2 of the report, but broadly are to provide cross-party member engagement and discussion in the work being undertaken to review policy documents, to provide informal feedback and discussion with officers on key draft evidence, documentation and policy options to guide officers formulating formal recommendations to this committee, provide regular updates to the Strategy and Resources Committee on its work informing the LDP review and SPD preparation, and take an active part in any planning policy training and encourage other members outside the working group to attend that training when offered to the wider membership of the council. In respect of the terms of reference, it's the third one down, which is about providing regular updates to the Strategy and Resources Committee, which this report seeks to do. I know that this report is a report of the chairman of the Planning Policy Working Group. It sets out for you how many times the working group's actually met and a summary really of the things which the working group has covered since the 14th of May. As I say, it's just really to note the content of the reports and to expect further reports in over the course of the next few years as the local development plan review carries on and the working group continues to work with officers to prepare it.
Thank you. Before I go to members, thank you for that report, Matt. I've got some concerns here, and I think more members should involve this at all levels. I don't think all members are getting enough involvement in this issue, and I think, as we did with the previous LDP, all members should be involved. And I think this is something I want to take forward with the CLT and see if we can bring that forward. I don't know whose decision that'll be. It might be full council, but okay, that's my piece said. Councillor Fluker and then Councillor Durham.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
And then Councillor Lagan.
I mean, first of all, Mr. Winslow said, I'm sure I heard him right when he said that the LDP would be sorted over the, quote, next few years. I was quite surprised to hear that, Chairman. The other thing, Chairman, this is a hugely important piece of work as far as the democratically elected members of this council are concerned. And Chairman, I've been reading the plethora of emails today, led by Councillor Bassinger, about the HELR, where we feel as though there's never been enough member democratic input into that. And that's certainly not what happened in the previous LDP, because I can remember members right at the beginning decided on strategic sites. We had lots of conversations around pepper potting. But Chairman, my real concern is bearing in mind this is such a hugely important piece of work, this committee never met in May. The meeting on the 14th of June was cancelled, and the meeting on the 12th of July was cancelled. Now, Chairman, that means for 3 months there has been no conversation with members and this committee on the policies that are going to drive this new LDP. But I'm heartened to see, Chairman, that the leader meets to discuss the LDP on a monthly basis. And I look forward to hearing an update from the leader's office at the next meeting of council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fluker and Councillor Durham. And then
just very briefly, Councillor Fluker is absolutely right. This is probably the most important document. But I would say we need to exercise a little bit of caution and maybe delay. we don't know what is going to happen with the government. We know what happened to our friend Mr. Gove at DLUC. The ministers all went. We currently have Greg Clark, who was the author and the promoter of the NPPF. He was the one that got it from 1,500 pages down to 150. He's very wedded to the NPPF. The chance of him being the Secretary of State come September, I think, is uncertain. So we've got no idea what direction the government are going to be going in respect of housing and planning. So I think we just need to step back a little. We need to continue doing the work we're doing, but we need to be mindful that the goalposts could be moved significantly yet again.
Thank you, Councillor Durham. So Councillor Lagan, then Councillor Siddle, then Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank
Okay,
you,
Councillor
Madam
Lagan.
Chair. I will be quick on this occasion. The report's noted, and thank you for that. I think that the majority of stuff that's been said in the chambers, I fully agree with. As there becomes more and more concern over the process of the LDP review and some of the data and the formulation of the data that makes that up, I think it's only right and proper that all members should be involved in it. And I wouldn't hesitate in a heartbeat, and I will put a motion in a full council or whatever committee it is, that there is a review undertaken and a pause where all members can have a look at the LDP review, because this is the legacy for the future, isn't it? And we're struggling really poorly now with what we've got. So I think that there is a major issue with underlying information coming forward. And we have to take a pause. We have to get the information. We have to make sure it's right. Councillor Durham's correct. You can't look into the future. But I think because it's this council's plan, it's the council's LDP, it's down to the full council when it comes to council to make a determination on what direction it wants to go forward. And I think that's really important to have on record. We need a plan. There's not a lot wrong with the plan that we've got. We just need to structure a little bit, maybe not be as aggressive in our estimates, and we can definitely regain our 5-year housing land supply.
I think the problem we've got, as Councillor Durham touched on, is the government keeps adding more and more housing to the targets. I think that's part of the problem.
But it's also how they calculate it. That's
Absolutely.
the land supply's tearing
yeah.
off, and that's the key thing for us.
Yeah, I think we all agree. Right, Mr. Winslow just wants to come back with a couple of answers before I move on to Councillor Siddle and Councillor Thompson.
Just to clarify some of the points that some of the members have raised. So the report before you is a reflection on what the working group has managed to do, rather than obviously looking forward in terms of what it's going to cover in the future. From the 14th of March, all members have already been invited to all working groups, and was a change that was made that all members are already entitled to attend the working group. Obviously, if council wishes to change how the members of the working group are formulated, it was council that decided it was originally 7 or 8 members. If it wishes that everyone is to sort of attend, then it's in its gift to do that. But as I say, all members are already invited to working groups. In terms of the recent cancellations of the working group, members may be aware that resources in the planning policy team have been diverted to development management to support the backlog of casework and enforcement, which I know members of this committee are aware of. And unfortunately, that has had an impact on the availability of officers to do work on the LDP. It wasn't spare capacity. It was moving from one thing to focus on another. And also, there have been a few of us that have been working on the Levelling Up bid and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which reports of which have come to you today. There is not spare capacity to do these things. It's literally deciding what is more important to focus on. But the working group will be back, as members have been advised, in August. And what we intend to do, if the new chair of the working group will permit, is to bring a working sort of a forward plan of items that would come before working groups, so that there's a little bit more structure to it in the future. And I think that would certainly support officers knowing what is due to be discussed and how members can best get an input into it. But just to emphasise, all members are already entitled to attend the working group.
Yeah, thanks for that, Matt. I mean, we know officers are under pressure. We know time's short. But I know I'd certainly like to raise of chair and S&R that members have a more hands-on input with the process, because it is the main holding part of this council, and it is one of the most, if not the most important subjects that we have to deal with. And I say it's not taken away from the work you're doing. We understand everybody's short-staffed and everybody's spread too thinly. But I wonder if we can look at not just everything going down to this one working group, because this is too important to just be to a handful of members. But obviously this was decided previously, and we'll have to see what we can do as a whole council. But thank you for your input. And right, I've got Councillor Siddle and then Councillor Thompson. So Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Jade. Yeah, last year when this all started, it sort of seemed to be that we were at like a gallop in terms of trying to get this done and the deadline, and it did seem extremely rushed at times, and there didn't seem to be enough consultation with officers. And I think this opportunity now gives us a chance to reflect as to where we are. And I think we've also now got to consider the timescale for how this now fits in with this council, with the election next year, with the pressures that we've just had. So if that means moving the deadline and to ensure that we get it right, then that's really the things that we should be looking at, is ensuring that we spend the right time on it, the right amount of resources, the right amount of consultation with both residents and with members. And if that means we go back a bit and revise things, that's much better than next year there's a change in the council and all of a sudden we do what some of the other councils do and say, oh, so we're not having this. Yeah, so we need to really be sensible about this project and how we move it forward, and whether we do need to go back a bit. And if we need to go back a bit, then so be it, which is much better than going too far and then it all going horribly wrong.
Thank you, Councillor Siddle. Okay, and Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I was hoping to give Councillor Fluker some comfort in that the leaders' meetings have been cancelled as well for all the same reasons. So we haven't had any special treatment. Thank you. I'm going to make myself deeply unpopular here, because we would, in fact, if we'd taken all the recommendations made by the policy officers at the time, if we'd taken them all on board and included them in the LDP, we probably would still have a 5-year housing land supply. But that's probably a conversation for another day. And the other thing is to point out, and I'll be lucky if I get out alive, this is not a democratic process. Planning never is. It's evidence-based. And where we can add to the evidence, that's fine. But what we want as members, and in fact what our residents want, has got absolutely nothing to do with it. Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome, Councillor Thompson. I understand that it's the law, but we did have a lot more involvement last time around, a lot more. Yeah. But anyway, right, okay, so are we going to, the recommendations of the committee notes be noted? Okay, right, no, agenda item 14, I do have a very brief item of any other business, but what I would say, due to time constraints, that we just have this read out as a report and we don't actually debate it, because it doesn't need debating, it is just a report. So members, if we could go to Mr. Holmes, and if you could read this report out, it's about the pontoon in Burnham.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's about the pontoon in Burnham. Just a brief update for members as has been requested. So I can confirm that the pontoon was identified for replacement and £60,000 sum was included in the estimates for this year. Unfortunately, in February, the pontoon was damaged by Storm Eunice, resulting in its premiere closure. Officers have been reviewing the necessary works to replace the pontoon and have identified additional issues to resolve, including the need to replace the existing steel locating piles, the need to increase the physical size of the pontoon to cope with the public use, which is not just used for berthing boats alongside, and the need now to resolve a structural movement not connected to Storm Eunice in the seawall, which is the old steps under the jetty itself, with the actual owners, and we believe that to be the Environment Agency. The additional work identified will exceed the available budget. Other costs, including the removal and disposal of the existing jetty, were not included in the budget estimate for its replacement, add to cost pressures. Material prices have also increased dramatically since the estimate was prepared. However, to resolve this matter, the replacement of the pontoon has been included within the Maldon District Council's UK Shared Prosperity Fund investment plan in the sum of £240,000. As the fund is a guaranteed allocation, this provides assurance that the works can commence. However, due to the funding profile provided by government, this may not be until the 23-24 and completion in 24-25, when the majority of our funding is provided. Finally, whilst the storm ended the use of the pontoon prematurely, it is also recognised more robust maintenance programmes will be needed to maximise the life of any replacement. The Council has been undertaking statutory safety inspections, will now have to fully cost a maintenance plan for members' consideration over the whole life of the asset itself. An options paper will be presented to members in due course for consideration relating to this project. Thank you, Chair.
Exactly. Well done, Mehmet. No, I'm not going to...
Can I just ask, is it coming to council in October? Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked the question. Is it coming to council in October, the proper paper, as it's been suggested? Please.
I suggest it will come to the September meeting of this committee, which is mid-September, I believe.
September, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, right, members. Now we're down to agenda item 15, which is exclusion of the public and press to resolve that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Act, and that this satisfies the public interest test. So if officers can let us know when everything's turned off. Tara? Sorry, agreed.
Yeah, Chairman, it just needs to be posed